Welcome to our panel this evening on women in politics and the politics of women. My name is Bryn West. I'm the political officer at the U.S. Embassy responsible for domestic politics, human rights, religious freedom, and women's issues. We are incredibly fortunate tonight to have such accomplished panelists joining us. Datuk Senator Ras Adiba, YB Isnaraissah Munirah Majilis, and the U.S. Embassy's 2021 International Women of Courage nominee, Qyira Yusri. I will give a full introduction for each of our panelists in a moment, but first, our ambassador, Brian Mcpheeters, would like to formally welcome you and start us off. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Bryn, and good evening, everybody. Selamat malam. I'm so glad I could join you for this important panel to close out the month of embassy activities celebrating International Women's Day and Women's History Month. Saya baru datang ke Malaysia sebagai Duta Besar Amerika Serikat, tetapi saya juga bertugas di sini 10 tahun yang lalu, dan waktu itu tugas saya ialah fokus kepada politik. So I'm happy to be talking about politics again. At the time I served here before, we met with many of the political players who are still active, including women politicians. That's including Deputy Speaker Yang Berhormat Datuk Azalina Othman, Members of Parliament Yang Berhormat Datin Sri Wan Aziza, Yang Berhormat Nurul Iza, Yang Berhormat Fuzia Saleh, and Yang Berhormat Teresa Kok, among others. I'm looking forward to meeting them again and hearing about everything they've been doing for the past 10 years. But let's talk about tonight. I can't think of a more fitting event to end our month of programming than a discussion of women in politics and politics of women. I'm interested in hearing the thoughts of the panelists of the role of women in politics in Malaysia, how they've gotten where they are, the challenges they faced, and the opportunities they see for the future of women in politics here. I had the great pleasure last week to meet Senator Datuk Ras Adiba and hear about her work, including with BERNAMA, so I'm delighted that she's here tonight. And of course, we also have with us Qyira Yusri, our embassy's nominee for the 2021 U.S. Secretary of State's International Women of Courage Award. We're so glad to be nominating her for her dedication to expanding the civic space for political participation in Malaysia. It will be interesting to see the powerful and presumably positive impact that youth can have in politics. And I also look forward to hearing from Yang Berhormat Isnaraissah about her work and experiences as well. Let me just say a word about the perspective on this issue from the United States and the United States government. Advancing the status of women and girls by promoting full participation of women in society, particularly within the economic and political realms, is a priority. It yields multiple benefits, not only for individual women, but for families, communities, and countries. Now, I kind of have had a career in economics, so I'm always looking for specific facts, and I found one on the unwomen.org website. So in a 2004 study of local councils in India, the result was the number of specific water projects in areas that were led by women was 62% higher than those led by men. I don't know what the men were up to, but that sounds like a good endorsement for having more women involved with local politics. So the embassy launched this year-long Wanita Empowered campaign. I'm coming at the end of it, but I'm delighted that it's still going on. And the idea is to promote equality and opportunities, support growth, and strengthen economic ties between the United States and Malaysia. Through economic empowerment programs like the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs and the Wanita Empowered Business Mentorship Program, we're working with civil society to create a cohesive ecosystem where women can be successful, confident, and innovative. Each of the panelists tonight have demonstrated their commitment to making Malaysia a better place for all. At every step, they've helped to push open the doors of opportunity for women in politics here, blazing a brighter trail for all the proud women following in their path and looking to their example. So they are all truly women of courage. I think this panel will show young women just beginning their careers in politics to see that no door will be closed to them. We need women and men throughout Malaysia to see and celebrate women's accomplishments and leadership in all levels of politics. We need little girls and little boys to grow up dreaming of serving their country and to know that this is what senators look like. This is what ministers look like. They're women. I just want to add a personal recommendation, not as an expert in women, but just as somebody who's been, developing my own professional abilities and working with others. I think the thing that I've learned, over the course of a 30-year career is when you start out, this I think it certainly applies to me, so I would think it applies to women and men. When you start out, you can spend a lot of time essentially questioning yourself. Am I good enough? Will I be picked? Can I handle this meeting? Can I impress my boss? You spend so much energy on that it takes away from what you're doing. So if you can possibly just kind of quiet that voice and dive into what you're doing, I think you'll find things much better. I must say I eventually learned to do that, but it probably took me 20 years, so it shouldn't take that long. But let's go back to the program. I'm confident and hopeful that these incredible leaders will continue to use their voices and actively work to promote opportunities for women and everyone in Malaysia. Although March is ending, we will continue to celebrate women and their contributions to the political process in Malaysia every month. I look forward to a day when we can hold these events in person, and I can hear more directly from all of you about your vision for the future of Malaysia. Just another note about the United States. I'm proud to see that 11 of 25 confirmed members of the cabinet, if you count the President of the United States and the Vice President, are women. I believe that's unprecedented in the United States, so we're very excited about that. And in particular, as the United States' first African-American female Vice President, Kamala Harris, recently said, quote, "What I want young women and girls to know is you are powerful and your voice matters," unquote. So with that, I really look forward to tonight's discussion and to hearing from powerful women who are paving the way for more women to lead here in Malaysia and elsewhere in the future. Thank you, and back to you, Bryn.
Ambassador, thank you so much. We truly appreciate you setting the tone for our evening. Now I will shift my focus to our amazing panel and let you all know how our night will proceed. After introductions of the panelists, I will ask a mix of group and individual questions to our speakers. And then at around 9 o'clock, we will open up to Q&A. So please feel free to post questions in the comments and we will ask them later. We want creative questions for our incredible female political leaders, so start thinking now. So I will begin tonight by introducing Senator Datuk Ras Adiba. Senator Ras Adiba started her career as a newscaster with TV3 and worked her way up to be the first chairwoman of Malaysia's national news agency, BERNAMA. She also represents persons with disabilities in the Senate and is president of OKU Sentral, an NGO championing the rights of persons with disabilities. Datuk Ras Adiba really has accomplished so much in the face of incredible odds. On top of her journalism career, in 2003, she completed a 14-day, 420-kilometer trip in her wheelchair from Johor to Kuala Lumpur. And she participated in the 2015 Para-ASEAN Games and 2018 Para-Asian Games in the 10-meter air rifle shooting event. And as a senator, she's been responsible for ensuring parliamentary broadcasts have simultaneous sign language interpretation. For her services to her country, she was bestowed the prestigious award of Tokoh Sri Kandi Negara in 2014. And just last week, she became a Datuk. So thank you so much for joining us. And next, we have Member of Parliament for Warisan in Kota Belud in Sabah, YB Isnaraissah Munirah Majilis, who is the former Deputy Minister of Energy, Science, Technology, Environment, and Climate Change. And when YB Mun was Deputy Minister, her ministry was one of only 2 ministries with full female leadership, the other being the Ministry of Women, Family, and Community Development. And she was chosen as Deputy Minister of MESTEC because she is an accomplished electrical engineer with a background in oil and gas. And YB Munirah is the only female federal member of parliament from Sabah and one of only 33 female elected representatives at the federal level in Malaysia. So in the 2018 general election, YB defeated the former Sabah Chief Minister and former Federal Minister, Saleh Said Karawak. So YB Munira is also near and dear to our embassy hearts, as she participated in an international visitor leadership program through the U.S. Embassy in 2015. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And last but not least is Qyira Yusri. Qyira is the co-founder of Undi 18, the driving force behind the unanimously passed constitutional amendment to lower the voting age from 21 to 18, enact automatic voter registration, and lower the eligibility age for contesting elections from 21 to 18. I am proud to recognize Qyira as our nominee from Malaysia for this year's International Women of Courage Award for her dedication to enhancing the civic space in Malaysia, especially for youth. The International Women of Courage Award was established to acknowledge women around the globe who have demonstrated exceptional courage and leadership in acting to improve the lives of others, from families to communities to countries. We have had many distinguished nominees from Malaysia in past years, including Ambika Srinivasan, Maria Chin Abdullah, Nisha Ayub, Indira Gandhi, Susanna Liu, and Sharifa Shakira. Tonight, we also want to honor one of our former nominees, the late Igel Fernandez, who sadly has left us in early March, for a lifetime of protecting and advocating for the most vulnerable in Malaysian society. Qyira's leadership with the Undi 18 legislation and the ongoing work of Undi 18 show that she is only just beginning to influence Malaysian politics. So I feel truly honored to be moderating this panel and know that everyone listening is eager to hear what you all have to say about women in politics and the politics of women. So let's get started. So first, I'll ask a couple of questions to the whole group, and you can take turns responding. There's a lot of research showing how strongly good mentorship can positively influence the career trajectory of women. So my first question is, what mentors, male or female, most impacted your life and career trajectory? And what do you do now to ensure you are providing mentorship to women interested in politics? So Senator Ras Adiba, let's start with you. We have to unmute you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Apa khabar again, and everyone listening in and watching us. I have to say the person that I looked up whilst growing up is actually my late grandmother and also my late aunt. You know, they struggled, but they, you know, gathered their courage to fight for the rights of the women. Even back then, my late aunt actually helped out with our team that was led by Tunku Abdul Rahman to London to gain our independence. So, you know, they struggled, they sold everything, they cooked, you know, they came together. So for me, recognizing that women's equal political participation and representation is the key to achieving sustainable development. Most countries in the world have agreed to reach gender balance in decision making, including in the 1995 Beijing Platform for Action. According to the UN flagship report on disability and development, the limited available data shows an extremely low participation and representation of women with disabilities in political leadership roles. It reports that the representation of women from organizations of PWDs, or persons with disabilities, tends also to be low in national coordination mechanisms on disability matters, and that their representation in national machinery for gender equality is even lower. Mentoring is one level we can activate to advance more women in their work to help them gain access to capital and economic opportunities they might otherwise miss, and to be better prepared for opportunities when it comes. I believe that one of the responsibilities of being a woman who is committed to working towards a more just world is being willing to be a mentor, be willing to be someone you can inspire. All of us, mentees, mentors, are amazing and outstanding women in the making, or already have made ourselves up there. And we declare to be close. We declare to be, rising together. That's another thing that we need to do. Actually, we need to pick each other up and not backbite and not, like squabble. But we need to be there for one another. So for me personally, I will be continuing to work extremely hard to prove that women with disability can also lead and be at top positions. My appointment as a chairperson of BERNAMA have opened many eyes and also raised a lot of eyebrows. But I feel that this can boost the spirit of more PWD women and also non-PWD women to participate in the national development agenda. Currently, I'm also providing platforms for PWD women, especially to excel in their respective fields, not only in politics such as training session, more women in national councils, lobbying for the post of assemblyman appointed for PWDs, especially women, sign language training, as you mentioned, unit in BERNAMA, which is actually mostly been taken over by a lot of women. So yeah, it's women power all the way, but you know, it's a teamwork. Guys and girls, we have to, just be together and work hard. But I also like to say right now that it is not easy, but not easy is good because then it makes us rise and work harder, to get up there.
Thank you, Senator, so much. And I'm going to ask you more questions about your work in broadcasting later as well. So let's hear from Waibu Munira.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be in this session. It is an honor to be here with the amazing women, other amazing panelists. If you ask me about what mentors, male or female, that most impacted my life and career trajectory, I would say I have few in my list, but I would first mention my big brother in politics. I always consider him as my eldest brother in politics. That is YB Daryl Liking, the current MP of Penampang, who made me believe in myself that no matter what background, where you come from, we are always equal to our counterparts in Semenanjung. Because coming from Sabah, there's always probably feeling being tiny, being from the east of Malaysia and those. Then there is YB Fuziah Saleh, the sitting Kuantan MP now, for recognizing my talent. And at the start of my political endeavor, she was the one who actually nominated me to the IVLP program in 2015, for giving me the chances to attend trainings and which develop my potential. Then last but not least, I must say my president, Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Muhammad Shafi Abdal, who taught me the true meaning of courage and my rights as Malaysian. I first, of course, we knew him back then while he was in UMNO and being one of the senior ministers in Federal of Malaysia. But I personally, getting closer to him when he formed Warisan together with YB Daryl at that time, and how he taught us to be brave and just the struggle as a Sabahan. And those are the people who actually inspired me a lot in my political career. As the Ketua Wirawati, our younger women wing, my role is not only to accommodate younger women, but also to train them about our struggle, our role in the party. I wish that I could do more mentorship during my days in Mastec, our ministry last time. But of course, I would want to train more Sabahan women. But of course, the struggle to bring them in the ministry, all those. But I wish I could do that in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, YB. And now, Qyira, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much again for having me and also for the nomination. I am again so humbled and so grateful for being recognized by the US Embassy. And I think I do have a couple of mentor figures in my life, right? I think one woman that played a pivotal role in my career so far is my mother. So my mother is a government teacher, and when we were growing up in Miri, Sarawak, she was the only government teacher that was qualified to teach special education for kindergarten children. So I know I grew up seeing my mother fight for the rights of her students. Because I know I'm sure if you know that if you are PWD in Malaysia, you are qualified to receive some form of welfare from the government. And at the local level, at that point in time, there was some level of corruption that was happening, where the kids and the families were not receiving their welfare aid on time. And my mother was the one knocking on government offices' doors and say, "Hey, you need to give my kids money or they will starve." And I would see how they would dismiss my mother so easily by just saying, so they would tell my mother, go back to Semenanjung, go back to KL, you don't know what you're talking about. And she would go and bang on the doors day after day after school until her kids would get the necessary welfare that they needed. So I think that was one of the reasons that I realized in university that I wanted to do community-related work. I just wasn't sure what yet. And then, of course, the journey of Undi 18 was quite insane, to be honest. And we started it as a student, right? When we were students studying in the United States, that was when we had the U.S. presidential elections was happening. So that was a pivotal. So that was a moment where my partner and I decided that we wanted to champion youth enfranchisement, which is how Undi 18 came about. So I came back to Malaysia after I graduated, decided I wanted to work in Malaysia. I wanted to give back to the community. And I was working in an education foundation called Teach for Malaysia, which is also modeled after Teach for America, which originated in the US. So it was very interesting. So when I left TFM, so when I was working after 2 years in TFM, I was considering what is my next step in my career. And my CEO at TFM, Zamir, he was the one that said, "What are you waiting for? You shouldn't apply for any other work. You should do Undi 18 full time." And I felt huge imposter syndrome. I was like, I didn't know I didn't know that it was the right choice. I had no funding. I had no support. I was like, I'm already working in the NGO and my parents are like, worried I'm not getting paid and I'm going to start my own NGO and they're going to be like, oh God, we're going to save this girl. But Zam, as my boss, he really believed in what I did. And one thing he offered was actually, I'll be your formal mentor for you to build your own organization and building your own movement. So that's such an incredibly valuable gift that I realize and understand now, being in the work that we do, because you mentioned earlier, Bryn, that it's like the work that I do is like it's new in Malaysia, right? It's transformative and it can be very lonely, to be honest, right? Where no one can really understand or relate what is it exactly you're trying to do. Of course, there are many senior women activists here in Malaysia that I really look up to, right? But I think being in a very unique position now where so much is online, so much is public. And when I first started my career as a young female activist in Malaysia, there was a lot of very interesting situations happening. Like, you get harassment, you get doxing. And these are all, that didn't really happen 40, 50 years ago when it comes to women movements in Malaysia. So, having a mentor is not just someone that can support you in my career, but I realized also a great sounding board because of the work that I do is like uniquely, I'm trying to focus on building a national movement. I'm focusing on youth empowerment. So engaging with someone who has been in the exact same position, my mentor. So Zam, for example, has started his own movement at 26 years old. So I was like, okay, I gotta beat that score, So that was my motivation as well. So as you can see, I'm kind of fueled by a little bit of competitiveness. And at this moment, I don't think I am in the position where I feel confident in mentoring other young women. But I do believe that the programs that we do is providing that avenue and that platform for other, especially young women, to realize that they have a voice and they have a space to participate. I think oftentimes, especially when we look at pathways into political participation, we see only political parties as the platform for it. So I think Undi team, and especially the 111 initiative, our gender equality campaign under Undi team, focuses a lot on creating these spaces for young women to develop and to learn without immediately being partisan, which I guess in a way can turn off some young people very quickly. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And Qyira, I think you're probably more of a mentor than you know. So for our second question for the group, we're going to jump into our topic of politics in Malaysia. And what role do women play in politics in Malaysia today? And what are the biggest barriers to women's participation in politics? And let's start with YB Munira.
Since I'm in the politics, right? Well, I think no one can deny women's contribution to the development of Malaysia. There is all for us to see there. Tan Sri Rafidah Aziz, Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Azizah Wan Ismail, my favorite minister, Yang Berhormat Yobin, my idol YB Izzah Nurul Izzah, YB Fuzia Saleh. There is no role that women cannot play in Malaysian politics today. I think even women can even be a better prime minister, right? It's just that the biggest barriers, I think, to women's participation is all about, there is always this question, can she do it full time? A part of, yes, of course, with the family, the motherhood, of course, especially the younger women's, when at this age, actually, we are starting our family, starting our career. But I think given the chance, we are better. Well, we can do it better. Because Indonesia, Philippines, all those neighboring countries, Thailand has proven. So why not Malaysia? I think that is a very short answer from me, because I think it's all there for us to see, proven. It's just a matter of, platforms and more opportunities.
Thank you, YB. All right, Qyira, I'm going to jump to you this time.
Yeah, I think the role that women play in Malaysia is to provide a balanced perspective when it comes, especially in politics, right, when it comes to policy making, because like it or not, all our laws are made in parliament, right, in both the Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara. So we rely on our parliamentarians to make decisions and to pass laws that is to, that we are, and we have to hope that it is justice, we have to hope that it is fair, and we have to hope that it is equitable. So as people as someone who is not a politician, there's only so much hope I can have, right? So I need to have action as well. So this is where, Malaysia should play a role in voting more women into parliament, right? We can push for more appointments of women into the Senate, because we want to ensure there's balanced representation in these important institutions. So and because of how Malaysia's political system is, we are in a Westminster system, we practice coalition politics, that a lot of decisions of how many women are contesting in elections falls onto party leaders, right? So political parties, as a tradition, reward people who are loyal to them, people who are close to them, people who they believe will support them. And this, of course, subconsciously means that you reward the people that is around you. And because our culture is quite we're not necessarily like a very diverse culture. We don't practice it growing up. We bring that culture into politics as well. So which is why you see, when it comes to, everyone will promise and commit to diversity pledges and say that we will put in more women, but when it comes to actually walking the talk, somehow there's not enough women to become political candidates. There's not enough women to become ministerial candidates. So then it begs the question, like, are the commitments they're making, is it only something that they use it as an election pledge, for example, or an internal party pledge, right? So I think it's too late to ask for women representations once elections are over. We need to ask these questions months before elections are even being discussed, because political party leaders need to be conscious about who are they going to platform and who are they going to invest in building and training and giving them leadership opportunities, so that when it comes the time to begin negotiating seats, or when it comes the time to decide who is running, they have a ready pool of talents to pick from, either male or female. And we don't just reward people based on like, well, I think this guy, is pretty loyal to me so far, so he's going to get a seat. So I think when we look at women representation in Malaysia, it's important to analyze and look into the systems that exist and thinking about what's actually creating the barriers for women leadership. Is it purely that women don't run? Is it purely that women don't have opportunities, or is it the system not accommodating them holistically and comprehensively?
Thank you, Qyira. I think the people listening are going to have a lot to think about with that, especially if there are people from political parties. Think about, women that you might field for future elections. And Senator Ras Adiba, what are your thoughts?
Well, I represent my community, so I'm going to be sharing more about, PWD's women. More than 10 years after the adoption of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, significant gaps continue between commitments and action to achieve gender equality, and also the empowerment of women and girls with disabilities. Nonetheless, some women with disabilities are playing a prominent role in the public sphere. Our ex-Senator Mawati did an amazing job demonstrating their capacity and transformative role in political leadership. Women with disabilities are severely underrepresented in decision-making, while both men and women with disabilities are underrepresented. Evidence from 19 countries in 2017 shows that only 2.3% of PWD women, compared to 2.8% of men who with disabilities, held a position as a legislator, senior official, or manager. Now, according to the 2017 data, in 14 out of 18 countries in Asia and also the Pacific region, there was no female parliamentarian with disabilities in the national legislative body. And in the other 4 countries, the share of women parliamentarians with disabilities ranged from 0.3 to 6.3% only. Everyone has the right to take part in government and public affairs, to vote and to be elected. Women with disabilities are a diverse group who experience various degrees of discrimination and face many systemic barriers to the exercise of their political rights and empowerment because of our gender and disability. These barriers can be of a legal, physical, and attitudinal nature, and include an inadequate access to education, health care, employment, and also justice. Now, barriers to the political participation and leadership of women with disabilities, these include discriminatory practices in political institutions and local authorities, limited knowledge among duty bearers on their needs and rights, stereotypical perceptions of their capacities, inaccessible processes and facilities, lack of assistance, devices and services and facilitating measures, lack of encouragement by family and community, and above all, limited access to civic information. Now, perhaps more concerning, women with disabilities have lower levels of internal political efficiency, perception of their abilities, and also interests, which significantly limits their participation. Like their non-disabled counterparts, women with disabilities who wish to participate in the disability movement work in a male-dominated environment, which is not always appreciative of gender equality arguments. So it is obvious there's still stigma, there's discrimination towards women with disabilities in politics, in being given the chance for us to participate. It is there, but for me, it is time for us to change that. And to all the women who are disabled, who's listening to us and myself right now, right here, you guys need to come out. The time is right now. If you don't get up, you don't dress up, you don't show up, people are not going to be paying attention to you. So you need to go out there. It's all in your hands.
Senator, thank you so much. Hearing you speak just reminds me of how many barriers you have overcome, including when you're talking about female representation of people with disabilities in Asia. So I want to pivot and ask you a question about being the first female chair of BERNAMA. As an anchor woman and now as the chair of a major media outlet, how can media and broadcasting entities ensure women's voices and perspectives are included in the media?
You know what? The first step is in achieving equality for journalists is to acknowledge that there's imbalance in the newsroom and news production. Top positions in the newsroom, it remains mostly for guys. So there is already discrimination there, whether we like it or not. But I tell all the other ladies in the fraternity whenever I see them, I said, you have to, as I mentioned before, you need to change this. If you don't stand up and prove yourself, then nothing's going to change. By the late 20th century, women across the globe focuses on enacting political and legal reforms to expand our equality and access to social institutions and to ensure protection of our rights. Underrepresentation in news production rose through the UN Decade for Women from 1976 to 1985. The leaders are pushing the UN to fund women's news and feature services in the 70s and also in the 80s to increase global news flow from progressive women's perspectives. It was a new era for women's rights. Many women become politicized during independence movements as countries broke from colonial powers. The legacy of that activism carried over into women's media, like Miss Magazine. So really, for me personally, as I mentioned earlier, my appointment as the chair of BERNAMA has, kind of like gotten some people uncomfortable, mostly men, because they feel that I shouldn't be there and I am not good enough. But I rose and just tell them, I say, you know what, this is what I do best. If you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know anything about media, especially television, electronic media, you don't mess with me because I am the last person you would want to take a fight with. So it's an honor. I cannot tell you how what it feels like to be able to chair a news agency, and what it feels like to have all the women coming up to me and say, hey, you're doing this for us. And I said, yes, I'm doing this for us. But again, we mustn't forget that we work as a team.
Thank you. That is amazing. And I would love to, I want to ask later about how you dealt with imposter syndrome when you were starting out in your career. So Qyira, I'm going to pivot to you. And when you and Undi 18 were pushing for the passage of the Undi 18 constitutional amendment, you were less than half the age of many of the MPs you were lobbying, and most of them were men. How did you get them to listen to you and take you seriously? And what did you learn from that experience that you can share with others?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. I didn't really realize that either. I think I started this when I was 22. Yeah, I'm 26 now. And I think one very interesting thing was that, so I am a young Malay woman, and my co-founder is a young Indian man. So we are, in a way, we have privileges, and yet we are also discriminated in many different ways. So again, right, intersectional feminism is a very interesting way to see how people react to when we go to campaign. So I think I knew that just two young university kids talking about electoral reform is probably not going to get many attention from people. However, we knew what people would listen to if there were many other young people talking about the same thing. So we didn't start by lobbying politicians immediately. We started by launching a social media campaign. We had to gather input, we gathered data, we ran focus group discussions to validate our opinion before beginning to speak to politicians. So what we did was that when we launched the campaign in 2017, we actually worked on, we got the endorsements and the support of almost 20 youth and student organizations around the world. So, as a Malaysian studying abroad, we have a network of other Malaysians also studying and living abroad as well. So we tap into that network, the Malaysian Students Global Alliance, and we started talking. So before we publicized our campaign, we actually reached out to them individually and said, hey, we want to launch this. We believe that your voice as a student leader abroad would add support to it. So when we launched it, it was not just an organization launching it. It was with almost 20 other organizations. So I think coalition building is extremely powerful narrative to show that we're not doing it for ourselves. Or in Malaysia, we say we're doing it short sendiri, right? Where we're doing it just to fill our own ego or something. So we knew that, okay, we're not just speaking, when we say we speak on behalf of youth, we know that that's validated, right? We have 20 other youth organizations to support. And of course, once we launched our public petition, I think it's still somewhere on change.org, if you can dig enough. It's still somewhere online that we launched with hundreds and thousands of youth voices as well, because we represented those voices. So I think to illustrate when we went to politicians and begin our advocacy, we illustrated how the impact of Undi 18 could be. And immediately, I think people could take us seriously in that sense. And I think, of course, if I were to do it all over again, or if I would tell someone younger than me, like, would there anything to change? What would I do differently? I think I wouldn't do anything differently. I wouldn't do anything major differently, but I would give myself a lot more credit in a sense, right? So I think when you start out in this advocacy journey, you have a serious case of imposter syndrome where you're like, I'm just a student, I'm a fresh graduate, I'm not even a government scholar, I'm not like some superstar academic student. I was not. Who is going to listen to me talk about an issue about this? But I think when it comes to doing your passion project, having persistence, having passion, and of course doing the right amount of research as well, so you represent yourself well. I really resonate with what the Senator mentioned about standing up for ourselves and representing ourselves, because I think I've seen my peers where we expect opportunities to be given to us because we are young, because supposedly we represent the future, and I absolutely agree, we do represent the future, but I think we also have the responsibility of educating ourselves before, when we want to represent ourselves on a certain issue. So 5 years ago, I would never consider myself an expert on like youth enfranchisement or youth empowerment. And today I'm speaking on electoral reforms. I'm pushing for institutional reforms and many other issues as well. Of course, I didn't just learn all this knowledge overnight. I had to read up, I had to learn, I had to teach myself public policy. And all of this is absolutely possible with the right amount of community, the right amount of support. And if you just know how to find them, and if you're keen enough and humble enough to look for them. So I think that's one thing that I would tell myself 5 years ago, maybe to say like, don't doubt your abilities so much, and that you do have a voice, and it's really about how you use that voice to speak to others. And I think that was the, energy I brought into the campaign, for the past 3-4 years. And interestingly, it's something that we have to revisit again this year with the recent news. So I think that's something very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Qyira. All right, YB Munira, this one's for you. You started your career as an electrical engineer, and there are, not that many women in STEM fields. So what was your experience studying engineering as a woman, and what parts of engineering are applicable to politics?
Before I speak, I must say I want to borrow Qyira's energy tonight, for speaking that, very in a very passionate way. Well, I was working at a mechanical and electrical firm in Sabah, and then I was asked to handle 2 to 3 projects in my company that is under me. That is, you are going to monthly site meeting, and then you have to design the electrical system for the buildings for that project, and then you have to deal with the authorities, and then coming back, report to your boss. I must say, working in consultant firm is a very technical, while politics, is very, how to say, artistic, that kind of way, very hard to define. I would say it's not directly related how I work as an electrical engineer and being a politician at the same time. But I thank for being engineer that taught me, I'm used to be the only female in a meeting, a very gruesome side meeting where it is very often to get maki hamon uh, from the developer, from then I used to work long hours. I used to stay at the office 4 a.m. designing things and then come back early in the morning. Um, then I used to work under pressure because of that. And thanks to that experience that brought me today in politics. At the same time, you are being the everything in the company. You are the engineer, you are the manager, and at the end of the month, you are being the accountant because you need to chase claim for the company itself. So if you ask me, the part of engineering are applicable to politics, well, in that kind of that working manner as an engineer, that uh, making me how to say okay lah in politics now.
Thank you, YB. Okay, so next we're going to have a question for the whole group. So, what do you see as the main issues facing the Malaysian government right now? And what novel approaches could women offer to solving those issues? All right, Qyira, we're going to start with you.
I think the current government has many different issues that they have to. I think it's very difficult to. As if I was the government, honestly, it's so much thing to prioritize because we're in a pandemic. There's political instability. So I don't want to be them, but I do want to hold them accountable, right? So I think for me, at the very moment, is that I think speaking as a young person, is that young person are disproportionately affected by the pandemic in a very unique way, in the sense where, like, this is our highest unemployment rate in decades since the 1980s, late 1980s. Young people are the first to be retrenched and the first to be to not receive any financial aid from the government, because they assume that young people are able to pick themselves up very easily or find a new job very easily. So I think economically, young people are affected quite disproportionately compared to other age demographics here in Malaysia. And interestingly enough, I mean, if you compare how other countries have responded in COVID when it comes to tackling issues, you see Malaysia really lacking behind in using a gender-based perspective in proposing budgets, in forming policies. I'm sure YB Munira can share experiences when she was in the ministry, how you need to be able to put yourself in your beneficiary's shoes when it comes to proposing policies. And I think because of our cabinet is incredibly bloated right now with not enough women representation. You don't have orang asli representation. There's so many communities not represented in our cabinet that when budgets or policies or even government stimulus are being passed, you can sense that it's made like, okay, we assume that this support or this help will be able to help everyone, but you miss the nuances and the details that you need to take into account when you want to cater to specific communities that exist in Malaysia. Either refugees or stateless communities or rural communities. We have different needs and different requirements, I guess, to survive. So you can't just assume that a blanket solution is suitable for everyone. So I think what young women can do now is that, it's not like we can be in government immediately, right? But I think young women should speak up and provide perspectives on how these policies are affecting them uniquely, right? We look at other countries and how they tackle issues of sexual reproductive rights, tackling issues of tackle even from economic lens, right? The pink tax and how women have to fork out more for our quality of life. These are all issues that you'd be surprised to find out that even men closest to you don't know about it. So I think young women, using the resources and access that we have, we need to find a way to speak up about these issues so that people can start to pay attention. I understand, of course, it's not our place to educate these powerful men what to think and what to do, but I think a powerful role that we play, instead of just providing input to the government, is that we can also influence change and influence the society around us to take women's concerns and women's needs more seriously. So I think that is a very unique role that young women can play now, considering the limitations that that currently exist in the current setting. Yeah.
Thank you. We have to use our voices. We have to make sure that everyone can hear what our concerns are and what our issues are. So YB Moon, what are your thoughts on this question?
Okay. Normally, I don't want to, although I'm a politician, but I don't want to sound too political. But I must say this, that the main issue that face the current government now is incompetency of governance. Some may disagree with me, but in reality, ministerial positions are rewarded to certain politicians of the present ruling government are not because of their merits. And because of that, we can see certain laws passed without being tabled or voted in parliament. And certain ministers could simply amend and gazetted laws without, concerning about the sensitiveness of the people, especially when the amount of penalty imposed on SOP offenders are much higher, is much higher than the country's average income. Well, to me, it's not only women that are affected by this issue, especially in this pandemic, but all of us. So as a politician, as a woman politician, I think, we better stop politicking and let us just focus to take care of the nation. We should focus on governing. If I, given the chance, being the Prime Minister of Malaysia right now, I would focus on the economy. I would give all the budgets, the peruntukan to every MPs. Despite you are the government or you are the opposition. I mean, let's take care of the nation first. Anything comes, let's us focus on Malaysia first, and that is the most important thing right now.
Thank you, IB. All right, Senator, over to you.
Well, guys, in order to include more women, especially women with disabilities, there are some stuff that we should do at a high level, which is the co-signers of this declaration needs to call upon all member states to strengthen efforts to empower women and girls with disabilities and enhance their participation and also promote leadership in society, particularly to ensure the full and equal participation of women and girls with disabilities in decision-making through the formulation of national laws and policies consistent with the exercise of legal capacity, equal protection under the law and prohibition of discrimination. And then we need to promote and protect the human rights of women and girls with disabilities with respect to power and decision-making from early childhood, recognizing that decision-making is a process which develops throughout our lives and is reflected in our everyday life, beginning from the family, where opinions of women and girls with disabilities must be considered in individual, family, and also collective decisions. So it's like we shouldn't be left behind, and then to take measures to address the multiple barriers faced by women with disabilities that prevent us from exercising our political rights, including as voters and also candidates. And then to adopt zero tolerance policies for violence against women with disabilities in politics, including psychological violence perpetuated by prejudices and stereotypes that women with disabilities are incapable of having independent opinions about public affairs and policies or the knowledge of their equal political rights. And then to strengthen institutional and environmental support for women with disabilities, most of whom lack the necessary supportive and enabling conditions for developing a political career, even when they are interested and also qualified. So there you can already see the discrimination, And then to promote political participation of women with disabilities in all policy matters, including by demonstrating and valuing how their experiences, perspective, and expertise enrich the whole of society where when they are reflected in policy outcomes. And to promote the visibility of various women with disabilities who currently occupy high-level leadership position and whose leadership positively impacts on the lives of women, girls, men, and boys as a result of their merits, abilities, and skills, in which they can serve as role models for millions of women and girls with disabilities in the world, and then to provide equal opportunities for civic education and political leadership training to encourage women with disabilities to pursue decision-making positions. Now, even for a country where there is a strong advocacy for gender equality and where the advancement of the welfare of women is well legislated, there's still a lot of work to do. Such is in the case of persons with disability. Men and women, PWDs, have wide gaps in educational attainment. There are more women than men who did not complete any grade at all. In the rural areas, the proportion of women who did not complete any grade at all was nearly twice as the men, 30.2% compared to 17.0%. This is the same case with PWDs in the urban areas, with women having 11% and men 6%. The disparities are wider in the rural areas than in the urban areas. So we really, really need to do something about this. But then, like, you know, as in media, as I mentioned earlier, in order for us to excel, we need to be out there. We need to write more about persons with disabilities on radio, television, digital media, on print media, you know, social media. We need to constantly push and create awareness. Public service announcements are very, very important. And we need to let parents out there know that it is very important for them to, you know, give the chance to the children to rise. We need to be able to empower them, which means really early intervention is the most important thing.
Thank you, Senator. And actually, even though I have a lot more very interesting questions to ask all of you, I want to pivot to our Q&A so that our audience has a chance to ask some questions. And Senator, the first question actually follows on to what you were just saying. And it is, the current Persons with Disabilities Act lacks any element of enforceability. Should we have laws that do not impose penalties for non-compliance? What will Senator Datuk Ras Adiba do to make the PWD Act enforceable?
Akta OKU 2008, or Disability Act, does not have, tidak punya itaring. It doesn't have a bite. It does not really, it doesn't defend us. Like, you know, if somebody does something wrong, say, for example, if they're, you know, the parking lots are misused, abused, and if building owners does not make their building accessible, there are no laws, or, you know, to fine them or bring them to court and stuff like that. So what I'm doing with friends in Harapan OKU, we are doing our very best to work with, you know, the policymakers, and not just in the Women's Ministry who handles the welfare department, but also work together with other ministries to make sure that it is fair to us and that our rights are upheld. You know, sekarang ni, if I may speak Malay, Akta OKU 2008 tidak punya taring. So, you know, ianya tidak memperkasakan kami, so we're doing our very best to make sure that the Disabled Act 2008 has more bite and it can protect us and you know, uphold our rights as persons with disabilities in Malaysia. So, yes, myself and our team in Harapan OKU and also my task force team, we are working very hard to make sure that the Disabled Act is, you know, more, lebih bertaring, and it can protect us.
Thank you so much, Senator. Okay, the next question is for all of you. It is, share one instance that you had personally experienced illustrating that there are still barriers for women to meaningfully participate in politics. Okay, we'll start with Waibu Munira. YB, are you still there? Oh, yes, we'll start with you. But you're oh, there.
Oh, okay. Well, I think my earlier years in politics, when I was being nominated as I contested in the same constituency, Kota Belud, back in 2013, but under Parti Keadilan Rakyat back in the days. It's just that of how difficult, not really difficult, but um, perhaps because other people wanted to be the candidate as well to represent the party, but and then being young, being a female, so they question whether baru budak-budak, still young, do they know about politics, all those, but the party fortunately at that time gave me the opportunity and nominate me as the candidate for Parti Keadilan Rakyat. I lost at that time in 2013. That was my first attempt. Other than that, I would say not so much. Um, not so much. Personally, my personal experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Qyira, you're up next.
I think so. I'd like to share an example when I was organizing Parliament Digital, which was this online simulation of the Malaysian Parliament that Undi team co-organized last July, and it was very interesting experiment for me to reflect on later, because I think it was the first time we did such a huge event that has so much attention and participation. For the first time, we had about 6,000 applications from young people to be a part of the program. And 1 week after the program was launched, we actually had only 6% of female participation from female applicants. And at that point in time, we were already at about, I think, 2,000 applications. And then we were looking at the numbers and we're like, this is pathetic. And I had a personal goal of like having 50% women participation. And I was like, what? 1 week after we opened, it's only 6%. How do we encourage more young women to participate? And then we also realized that, over the past the few days after we launched, we had many questions and many young women and girls texting us on social media saying that, hey, I'm not confident enough to be a speaker in this program. I'd love to just observe. Or how can I help? How can I volunteer for you? But I don't want to be a part or as a participant. So I was just like, why do young women not want to be a part of the program? I mean from the get-go, the program very clearly means that you have to be very public facing, you have to do some form of public speaking, and basically have a platform to speak up, right? And we noticed that so many young women just didn't have the courage to participate because they felt like they weren't good enough. And for me, it was just astounding because, of course, it was an application process. So I saw many terrible applications, and I would say, that's pretty equally represented. Women don't give worse applications than men, and it was such a challenging time because we only had 2.5 weeks to recruit participants, and we didn't want it to be dominated by only Malay male participants. So we began reaching out to youth councils, reaching out to the women NGOs, also asking female politicians to start tweeting and talking about it, to recommend young women from their constituency to apply. And then that's when I also you can realize, role modeling is so important, because if a female leader actually says, hey, we need more young women in this program, many more girls are like, okay, I believe in this program because it's an endorsement, and I think if she can do it, I can do it as well. So role modeling is such an important aspect for female leadership, in my opinion, right? Having mentors, having role models. So there was one barrier I noticed, is that this was a program that was free for all. We don't have you don't have to be nominated, you don't have to be selected to apply. You just had to apply yourself. This opportunity is given to you, and yet we saw such a low number of female applications. So after all the interventions we did, at the end of when we closed the application, we had about 30% of female applicants, and then we also selected and finalized the selection, and we had almost about slightly above 30% women representatives in our Parliament Digital, which is still higher than our real Parliament in reality. So that was the experiment trying to prove that, if you give women a platform, it's not enough to just make it open for all. You have to also nurture women to seize these opportunities. You have to make the space inclusive and accessible for not just women, but many other marginalized communities. So I think also 2 weeks into the program, into the recruitment, we realized there were no any PWD participants in it as well. So we reached out to Majlis Belia OKU to get recommendations, to get them to promote it in their own communities. We reached out to community organizations like Boleh Space, right, who advocates for accessibility in Malaysia, and they amplified the opportunity. So that's why we realized that, as organizers, it's our responsibility to make the space inclusive, and you can't just post it up and say that, oh, women don't want to participate, so it's not our fault. I think the responsibility, we need to hold ourselves accountable to the vision that we have when we organize programs like this. Yeah.
This is from Qyira, who's not yet a mentor, right? Right. So, Senator, do you have any thoughts on this question?
I lost you there because I was so listening to her.
The question is, share one instance that you had personally experienced illustrating that there are still barriers for women to meaningfully participate in politics.
Wow, I think, YB Moon would probably have a better say in this. As you all know, I got, invited into the Senate last year because of my contribution and participation with persons with disabilities since I became disabled in 2002. So but having dabbled in the media, politics is an everyday thing for all of us. So I went into Parliament in the upper house, somewhat prepared, but I have to say that there's a lot of chivalry in there, and I learned quite a bit. I don't face. I'm very grateful that I don't face any discrimination or anything like that in Parliament. But I can only say the discrimination that I really encounter is actually the surroundings. How people's perception towards us, and that sometimes people actually look down upon us just because we're disabled. But otherwise, being in politics, I'm very blessed. I learned so many things from so many wonderful people around me, and I'm so happy to see YB Moon, and hopefully it's one of these days, aku pergi Kota Belud, jumpa sama kau, I'll come over and visit you over there.
Come over.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the next question is asking about the opinion towards the marginalized communities, such as the transgender community in Malaysia. And the person who asked the question gave several examples of trans women in the United States being winning political contests or being appointed to cabinet positions. So what about the trans women here in Malaysia? What do we do here to include trans women in the movement towards equality for all? And in what way would trans women be able to be given equal justice and opportunity in Malaysia, since their gender identity has been denied? Qyira, I'm going to give this one to you.
Yeah, I think, so this is a very difficult topic in a way that Malaysia is not culturally ready, in my opinion. Just someone who's observing politics in Malaysia, that there are no parties that are willing to take on the LGBT issue except parties, the Socialist Party in Malaysia, and I think one of the reasons that being is that Malaysia, we're not in a space where we're able to hold these difficult and challenging conversations at an open, in a public and open manner, right? So I think, and that starts from because our institutions systematically discriminates against people from different gender identities or sexual identities or sexual preferences. So I think unless we have change at an institutional level or there's enough political will to address these issues, I think unfortunately Malaysia is going to find itself being in a very difficult position to be advocating or to provide safe spaces for these kinds of developments. However, I do think that I'm a bit more optimistic, right? I think people will change over time. We have seen how over the past years how the fact that only 18 was able to pass was that we could get some old people agree that young people have the right to vote. I think, and that was so challenging, right? Getting people to believe that young people have agency and have rights, and that we have so many instances where women are still being discriminated systematically, unconsciously. As well, right? We have unconscious bias, we have systemic discrimination, and then you have the issues of like racial issues, and then also LGBT community issues. So I think if we are able to cultivate a space where discourse like these are able to occur in a safe manner, I think then we can see evidence that society is maturing or moving towards that sort of conversations, which would eventually might lead to legislative change, right? So I think as someone who is very privileged to be able to see my own cause achieve legislative change in such a short time, I recognize that it's not an easy process. So I think I don't have a very short or a solution to answer this question, and I look up to someone like Nisha a lot. In my own advocacy journey, the resilience that she has shown, the adversity that she has been through. I think I saw her speak when I was a university student in Sunway, so it really blew my mind. Unfortunately, I think and one thing that Undi 18 tries to do is that how do we foster a space where young people can have difficult conversations, whether it's about gender identity, whether it's about racial relations, whether it's about political ideology, and I think we try to carve those spaces out whenever we can in our programs, and hopefully we can influence and sort of, I guess, maybe build cohorts after cohort of champions that can hold these spaces and pursue more discourse like this further. Yeah, that is, I think, I try my best to respond. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Qyira. Okay, so this next question, I think, Qyira, it's targeted towards you, but I actually think that everyone could potentially provide a response. So I'm going to ask it as written, and you can interpret that as you want. But when the present government rejected Undi 18, what are your immediate reactions? What are your plans to make this possible for our young people? So actually, Qyira, I don't know if I want to start with you on this one. I might ask Senator Ras Adiba for her thoughts.
No, I think Qyira is much better in answering that. I don't want to get myself in trouble, and neither does YB Moon. Betul ke ba?
But Undi 18 is you remember that we actually voted that usul in Parliament back in 16th of July 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Right? And then I'm one of the 211 MPs that voted to luluskan that Undi 18. Of course, being one of those young voted for that usul, I'm very frustrated because that usul is being voted in Parliament. Someone told me that you cannot because I read articles from few other politicians that said you cannot give the Undi 18 because of the immaturity, all those. But someone told me you cannot learn experience by reading textbook. You have to go through it. So no matter how many times you do usul, no matter how great that whatever you want to provide for the young people, the women, but if you don't walk the talk, then it will never happen. So for Qyira, especially being the person who behind it all the time, it's a long journey to do that, of course. And then being Malaysian, being politician as well, seeing those usul that being voted, and then after 2 years without a proper explanation is very frustrating. And for myself as a politician, I think we want to keep pushing the current government because I don't know why EC is the one who make that statement, and then why not open the parliament so that we can debate this matter? It's a very important matter in parliament soon. That's my opinion.
Thank you. And Qyira, do you have anything to add to that?
I think I mean my initial reaction when I heard about the statement by the EC chair was honestly was frustration, right? Because I mean it's been 5 years since we advocated for this. It's been 2 years since it was passed in Parliament, and to hear that after all of that that we went through, to know that it will be postponed for further 15 months, I think that's quite a huge injustice that we need to question, and that we need to hold our leaders accountable, right? And at this point, you can't even say that it's the problems with the parliamentarians, because at the end of the day, the EC answers to the Prime Minister, which is why, interestingly enough, you see members of the current cabinet speaking up about it as well. So I think that's right. The responses that we see from everyone, including even parties within the government, is quite encouraging, in my opinion. It shows that I think I don't think it's I want to think that they're not afraid of young people, but they look forward to young people's participation. So I think that's probably why they are speaking up about it. But at least on my organization side, we are working with lawyers to gather 18 young people to between the ages of 18 and 20 years old to do a judicial review on the government's decision on this matter. So I think we will be I think announcing it to the public on Friday. But I think fundamentally we are trying to ask the government to reconsider the decision and instead to implement lowering the voting age first and allow SPR to have adequate time to implement automatic voter registration, because we believe that those two shouldn't be tied together. And that is the legal challenge that we are pushing for. However, I want to caveat that I'm not a legal expert, so I will not be the one arguing in court, and the lawyers will be the one will also be sharing about it when we announce it on Friday. Yeah.
So Qyira is a potential politician, guys. Don't you? You'd agree with me, right? I mean, look at that go. I mean, like, you go, girl.
Thank you, YB. I think my political plans at the moment, I enjoy being in the coaching / educating role, where I work with young women and young people. However, I'm not the kind of person that would never say never, because I think for the past 5 years of my life have shown that nothing I planned in high school ever worked out. In high school I wanted to be a children's book writer. Clearly, I'm far from that. All I do is tweet. So nowhere being a book writer anytime soon. So I think
you can compile all your tweets and turn it into a book. Trust me.
Yeah.
So ladies, we just have a couple more minutes. So I want to give everyone a chance to give some final thoughts very quickly, and then we'll conclude right on time at 9:30. But I am just awed by your responses and how wonderful this has been so far. So let's start with Qyira. Do you want to give us some final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the question about young women in leadership is always very interesting to me, because I sincerely believe that young people and even young women, we need to have more intergenerational conversations. We stand on the shoulders of our mothers, of our grandmothers, of the women that have blazed the way before us, and we wouldn't be where we are today without their struggles and their sacrifices. I think oftentimes young people just brush away the elder generation's thoughts and comments, and while there are certain things we are able to prove them wrong, I still think, especially it's when we have role models, we have mentors, it's important to and listen in their experiences, and not just take advice, but oftentimes can learn from the mistakes that they've made. So there's value in having these intergenerational conversations and interactions, and that's what I hope more young women consciously try to do more in the future.
Thank you so much. Okay, YB Moon, your closing thoughts.
I started my political career because I think, after 60 years, I still see the development disparity between Sabah and Semenanjung, and that has always been my struggle. So I hope, there is always a courage to strive to reduce the gap, and because it is very hard to be equal if we don't do so. And I would wish everyone's all the best and it has been a great opportunity to be, one of the panelists tonight. Besides YB Senator Ras Adiba and also the young and energetic Qyira Yusri. And thank you, US Embassy for this opportunity.
This is truly our honor to be a part of this. So, Senator, your closing thoughts?
Well, I just like to say thank you guys for having me on board, just chatting and listening to everybody and sharing, your stories and your experiences. Again, Qyira, I mean, I look forward to you being a politician soon to represent the younger generation. But as for me, I pray and hope to see more women out there come out and hold, high posts and, amazing positions, especially persons with disability, women with disability. And I look forward to having a minister who's disabled, so as, we are right up there and people give us more attention and can fight for our rights. So, yeah.
All right. I think that is all the time we have for tonight, though I'm sure, like everyone, I could just keep listening. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have found this panel incredibly inspiring. My cheeks hurt from smiling so much. And it's also left me with a lot to think about. And my work in domestic politics is now, stronger from having this conversation. So I hope many of you listening, women and men, will take what we've heard tonight with you and think about your role in politics and the politics of your participation in the government and in politics. So I hate to quote Vice President Kamala Harris again after our ambassador did it so well earlier, but I'm going to anyway because I've never had a female vice president to look up to before, and it's still amazing to me. And so to end this Women's History Month, I want to bring her voice here. So she said, "What I want young women and girls to know is you are powerful and your voice matters. You're going to walk into many rooms in your life and career where you may be the only one who looks like you or who has had the experiences you've had. But you remember that when you are in those rooms, you are not alone. We are all in that room with you, applauding you on, cheering your voice, and just so proud of you. So use that voice and be strong." So thank you to our incredible panelists, YB Datuk Senator Ras Adiba, YB Isnaraissah Munirah Majilis, Qyira, our IWOC nominee, for giving their time and sharing their experiences with us so candidly. And thank you all again for joining us to discuss women in politics and the politics of women. Thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you. Selamat.
Thank you so much.